Volume 1, the two of you.
The treatment of illness.
111.
Number 166. Are we started?
Yeah.
Okay. So, as I was reading forward a little bit, I came across a quote, and it was then a reference, and then I thought, well, I know that Gosho, so let me go to that Gosho. And then I found all kinds of stuff in that Gosho that kind of picks up part of what we were talking about last week as far as actual Ichinen Sanzen versus theoretical Ichinen Sanzen. So if you were to go to volume 1 of the Writings of Nichiren Daishonin, Gosho number 166 on page 1111, you would see that it's the treatment of illness. And I'm not going to read the whole Gosho at all, but you can see I always highlight a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it just so happens usually when I highlight something, then when President Ikeda goes and references it, I go look and it's like, okay, I already got that highlighted. I have already read that. So let me just gloss over this and just read the high points to get through it, and then we'll get to the text of the lecture. He says, this is from Nichiren to the lay priest Toki Jonin, obviously. He says, the illnesses of human beings may be divided into two general categories, the first of which is the illness of the body. I'll skip what he describes there. Then he says, the second category of illness is illness of the mind. So it goes, so then he explains illness of the mind. He says, further, the Lotus Sutra itself is divided into two distinct categories, the theoretical teaching and the essential teaching. So do you understand what he's saying here? Understand that he's making that distinction. He's saying that the Lotus Sutra itself is divided into two distinct categories, the theoretical teaching and the essential teaching. One is as different from the other as fire is from water or heaven from earth. The difference is even greater than that between the Lotus Sutra and the sutras that preceded it. Does that put in perspective the difference between the theoretical and the essential teaching? He says, I'll say that again. This is from the Daishonin in this Gosho. He says, further, the Lotus Sutra itself is divided into two distinct categories, the theoretical teaching and the essential teaching. One is as different from the other as fire is from water or heaven from earth. Now those are pretty big opposites, right? But he goes even a step further to say that the difference is even greater than that between the Lotus Sutra and the provisional teachings. Okay? So he's qualifying there that the essential teaching is something on a level that's never been perceived before. Because he's looking at the essential teaching from the perspective of the fact that it contains Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand? That's the whole point. That's the difference between theoretical Ichinen Sanzen from the 2nd chapter and actual Ichinen Sanzen from the 16th chapter. He says, the difference between the theoretical and essential teaching is that in the former, the Buddha is described as having attained enlightenment during his life in India, while in the latter, he is the Buddha who attained enlightenment in the remote past. One, and I'm skipping as I go through this, so, understand that I'm jumping. He says, one who confuses the essential teaching with the theoretical teaching would not have the sense to distinguish fire from water. That's how much this theoretical aspect of Ichinen Sanzen and understanding it versus actualizing Ichinen Sanzen in your life, that's how much they're different. I'll say it again. One who confuses the essential teaching. So one who predicates everything on the theoretical construct, the philosophical construct, without getting to the essence of life, which is the basis of the 16th chapter, the eternal Buddha nature, okay, will not have the sense to distinguish fire from water. You won't be able to tell the difference because you haven't understood the teaching correctly. He says, only Tentai in China and Dingyo in Japan generally differentiated between the two. The latter day of the law is the proper time for the spread of the essential teaching. So the followers of Hinayana, Provisional Mahayana, and the Lotus Sutra's theoretical teachings will receive no benefit from their teachings, even though they are not guilty of any fault. Do you understand? Okay, so there's nothing to be gained from that. Even the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra. He says, question, if you have stated the benevolent deities inflict punishment on this country because it does harm to the devotee of the Lotus Sutra, then epidemics should attack only the slanderers. Why is it that your own disciples also fall ill and die? He goes on, he says, in contrast, the heart of the Lotus school is the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, which reveals that both good and evil are inherent in even those at the highest stage of perfect enlightenment. So what did he just say there? That's why I brought that up. That's why I asked that question. Okay, because what's the difference between the theoretical, what's another differentiation between the theoretical teaching and the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra? I'll answer it by reading something that I don't have highlighted here. He says, your question is reasonable. Nonetheless, you are aware of only one side of the situation, not of the other. Good and evil have been inherent in life since time without beginning. So our original state contains both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yes.
According to the provisional teachings and the schools based on them, both good and evil remain in one's life through all the stages of the bodhisattva practice up to the stage of near perfect enlightenment. And what is that? Then you've conquered fundamental darkness, right? You've eradicated fundamental darkness in order to reach Anuttara Samyak Sambuddhaya, according to the provisional teachings. Do you understand? That's why you'd go off to a Buddha land, because you've now differentiated yourself from any kind of evil. There's no evil in your Buddhahood, right? But he says, but hence people at the stage of near perfect enlightenment or below have faults of some kind, but not those at the highest stage. He says, in contrast, though, the heart of the Lotus School is the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, which reveals that both good and evil are inherent even in those at the highest stage of perfect enlightenment. So what does that say? That says that the common mortal is also the Buddha. Do you understand? That's exactly what that says, because it says that fundamental darkness doesn't leave you. Okay? You stay a common mortal, even though you are in the realm of actual Ichen and Sanzen. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right, so the fundamental nature of enlightenment manifests itself as Brahma and Chakra, whereas the fundamental darkness manifests itself as the devil king of the sixth heaven. The benevolent deities hate evildoers, and evil demons hate good people. They're all inherent in the same moment of life, though. Understand, they're not differentiated. They're not two separate crews. You follow? All right? They're not differentiated on the basis of a separation. They both contain the entirety within each. It's what are they manifesting. It's not what is the basis. You understand? The basis is both good and evil are the same thing. It's whether they're manifesting as good or as evil that we view them as such. But they're not separated. He says, and then the guy said, then he goes on to explain that for some reason, however, there is less affliction and death among Nichiren's followers. So he's saying, even though that there are these epidemics that are wiping out all the other sects, according to your teaching, Nichiren, you should be saying that, it's only slanderers that are getting affected, but you still have people that are chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that are getting sick. He's saying, yeah, but you're looking at good and evil as separated, and according to the Lotus School, they are not separated. Okay? And it's how they're manifested in the life of the individual. And then he said, qualifies that for some reason, my followers have a lesser degree of falling into this situation where they're dying of these different afflictions that are going around in society at the time. He says, for some reason, however, there is less affliction and death among Nichiren's followers. It is indeed mysterious. Is this because we are few in number, or because our faith is strong? And then skipping over to the part that he actually had Here. There are two ways of perceiving the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. One is theoretical, the other actual. What Tiantai and Dingyo practiced was theoretical, but what I practice now is actual. Because what I practice is superior, the difficulties attending it are that much greater. The doctrine of Tiantai and Dingyo was the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life of the theoretical teaching, while mine, so he makes a separation, a differentiation of their teaching versus his teaching, while mine is that of the essential teaching. These two are as different as heaven is from earth. You should grasp this deeply when the time comes to face death. Okay? Why is that important to grasp at the moment of death, at the time of death?
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. It's not to see death as something bad. Okay? It's what's giving rise in that moment. Okay? That death does not involve a necessity of something. It's not evil. Okay? The same good and the same evil both exist in each life moment, right? Mm-hmm. So it's what are you manifesting at the end of your life? You shouldn't be manifesting some regret or some doubt based on the fact that you're afflicted or that you're facing a difficulty. Okay? And I just happened to read this before all this stuff happened this past week. And what ended up happening is my father-in-law ended up going into the hospital the day that I talked to you last Wednesday. And Thursday, she was given the information that he was in really bad shape. He only had days to live. Okay? There was one small chance for him to extend his life, and that would be that he'd be willing to undergo the discomfort of doing some sort of chemo to try and keep what was going crazy and keep it in check. And so my brother-in-law came home from the military, and it's a big family thing. I'm not trying to inject myself. And her big test that she's been studying for 4 months was on Monday. So we went through the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Chin got here on Saturday, right? Friday. So they were doing the whole hospital thing. And so then I would ask every day, how's Baba? And she, on Saturday, she goes, he's looking really old. Mm-hmm. Baba looks really old. And I said, oh, that's not good. Because again, he had this whole issue with his gallbladder. And so then Sunday, I said, how is he? She goes, he's very, very weak. He can barely move, or he's very listless. He really seems like he's not doing well. So Monday she had the test. I said, you know what I'm going to do? Everybody's gone. Chen had to leave. I'm just going to go and chant. And so as I was chanting, before I went over to chant, I thought, why am I chanting about this is the end of his life? Help him. I should be chanting like, let's kick some ass here. Okay? Devils. What are you to me, the Buddha? So, as crazy as it sounds, I put on my Buddha hat, thought as though I were Nichiren, and attacked the Gohonzon from that perspective. I want to see actual proof. I don't want to see some sort of an easing into the end. I want to see a change. I want to see some actual proof, even if it's only for days. It shouldn't be that we're left with this circumstance that he's in a deteriorated situation to this degree, because he's chanted Daimoku now. So I went over there. I even took my own chair, took my Omamori Gohonzon, and I got there, and I just sat my chair at the end of his bed because I didn't want to give him any germs or anything. He's in a diminished state, and he could barely move, but he seemed to be really happy. He woke up enough to know that I had come. And so I think he was kind of freaked out because he didn't have any idea that I was just going to sit there and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myo. So I did it very reverently, slowly, so that he could really hear it. And I set up the Omamori Gohonzon with the Butsudan at the end of his bed, so that he could look at the Gohonzon while I chanted, because he's really, again, he is Nimbutsu. So this whole thing is I'm going, okay, can I help my Nimbutsu father-in-law, my dad, out here, So I just started chanting, and you know, as he was watching me chant, I was saying it very seriously, and I looked at him and I pointed, I said, Jayo, Baba, Jayo. And he started to cry. Jayo, Jayo. So then he started to try to chant with me. Then my mother-in-law, okay, started to chant Daimoku and correct his pronunciation and really kind of guide him. And as I explained, it wasn't important that he had every syllable correct, because it was really the spirit of his life in that crucial moment, okay? And really wild thing happened. All of a sudden, he turned around. He's in his bedroom right now. Yeah. He's in his bedroom right now. He's walking around this room today.
Yeah.
Yes. He took a shit on his own. Okay?
Yes.
I mean, I'm seeing some actual proof. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is really the point I wanted to make. And I wanted to be able to tell a story tonight. I wanted to tell a story of actual proof. I wanted to show the proof of actual fact. Okay? And it's occurred. It's occurred. And we don't know how long this will last, but there's a chance it could actually last a lot longer than we thought it was possible. Okay? Because if he reacts well to the chemo, there's a chance he actually could shrink his tumors, and this could extend his life by quite a bit. But what's really extended his life more than anything else is the life condition of, he told her, he says, I can't tell you how much it meant to me for Tom to come over today, because I felt protected. And suddenly, the warmth has returned to his hands. His circulation has recovered. Oh my God. I mean, again, I'll start crying talking about it. He doesn't look like who I was looking at on Monday, right now.
Right.
Really, it's actual proof. It's actual proof. Okay, so I just encourage you, you know, when you're at a crucial moment, you are the Buddha. You must embrace that. You know, if you really want to bring forth the power of faith, you have to have faith in the teaching. The teaching says you have that power. And unless you feel that you have that power, you can never manifest it. In the back of your mind will be that nagging doubt. That's not doubt-free faith. When you have that nagging doubt of whether your prayer will do any good, then that's not doubt-free faith. Okay? Doubt-free faith is when you're in front of the Gohonzon and you know that you're encountering a situation for the sake of many people, not just one. Not just yourself. This is how you accrue actual proof in your own life to convince yourself of the teaching, and actually how you're able to expose that relative power, empowerment, that's innate in all people. It's not me. I'm not any super dude. I've just read enough that I know, okay, trigger. I know. It wasn't even me. It was Gohonzon told me. Okay, get your head straight. What are you doing here? Why are you thinking about this like from the standpoint? Because when I first started chanting, it wasn't really about that he could continue, because he'd already been given like no chance of being able to continue. Dude is in bed right now. Right now, yeah. It's
because his liver actually started to fail already, and then the doctors say within a week, because liver failure it happened in a day or two. Yeah.
So that was my very cool experience that I wanted to share, and. Again, good and evil are the same thing. You don't have to get rid of the evil. All you got to do is expand the good. You'll never get rid of the evil. The evil will always be there. I just read you Nichiren Daishonin saying that. Okay? Even those in the state of Anuttara Samyak Sambodai still have the devil of the sixth heaven to deal with. They still have a fundamental darkness in their life. Okay? Our job is to recognize fundamental darkness and eliminate the aspect of its effect in our life by chanting Daimoku correctly with correct faith. That's how you get rid of it. That's how you turn yourself from common mortal into Buddha. Constantly, constantly, constantly. That's how you live in the 9 worlds and manifest the 10th. Is everybody with me? Yeah? Does that make sense? Okay. So last week at the end we got through the Gosho portion. Should I reread that again so that there's a point of reference? And you weren't here, I will do it. Okay, so we're going to start at 5, and I'm just going to read it without making comments. All right? A vow for the enlightenment of all people, the power deep within our lives that can overcome all obstacles. Again, if you don't believe it, you can't do it. This is the key. If you don't believe in the Daishonen's teachings, you can't, and if you believe in the Daishonen's teachings, then you know this to be true because he said it is. Do you understand? All right, so I, Nichiren, am the only person in all Japan who understands this, that the other Buddhist schools proffer slanderous teachings and cause people to fall into the evil paths of existence. My father-in-law doesn't chant Nembutsu anymore. No, he knows not to now. But if I utter so much as a word concerning it, then parents, brothers, and teachers will surely censure me, and the ruler of the nation will take steps against me. On the other hand, I am fully aware that if I do not speak out, I will be lacking in compassion. I have considered which course to take in light of the teachings of the Lotus and Nirvana Sutras. If I remain silent, I may escape persecutions in this lifetime, but in my next life I will most certainly fall into the hell of incessant suffering. If I speak out, I am fully aware that I will have to contend with the 3 obstacles and the 4 devils. Okay, so when did the 3 obstacles and the 4 devils manifest? Whenever we're in the process of bringing forth our enlightened state. Okay, because the fundamental nature of life is going to have fundamental darkness in it, right? So we're going to get opposition to the fundamental nature of good in our life, which is not separate or different. Do you understand? That's my point. That's what I'm saying. It's important for you to understand Sancho Shima is not karmic. It's only karmic from the standpoint of attainment of Buddhahood. It's not bad karma. The 3 obstacles and the 4 devils are not bad karma. They only manifest in a certain time for a certain reason. Do you understand that? Does everybody at this table by now understand that Sancho Shima, again, in Soka language, quite often the word, the term Sancho Shima is thrown out all the time, okay? Or the 3 obstacles and the 4 devils, if you want to translate it, right? Okay? But it's often like I had some Sancho Shima, all right? I had some Sancho Shima. So like it's like a difficulty is Sancho Shima. No, difficulties are karmic, okay? If you're not in the process of the attainment of Buddhahood. Do you understand? It's your attainment of Buddhahood that brings Sancho Shima out. You would never have run into that Sancho Shima, that karma, if you hadn't chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and advanced along the path. Do you understand? The causal recrimination, bad karma from cause and effect kind of standpoint, that occurs in everybody's life. Yes. That's a different situation than Sancho Shima. Sancho Shima happens to those who have faith. Sancho Shima happens to those who practice correctly. Okay? Sancho Shima occurs in the lives of those that have done nothing from a karmic standpoint to have that circumstance occur. It's occurring because they're attaining enlightenment. That's what brings it forth. Do you understand? It's fundamental darkness. Everybody with me?
Yes.
Are you with me? Don't, because I don't think you are.
Okay, carry on.
So
I will try, and I'll let President Ikeda. Okay. If I speak out, I am fully aware that I will have to contend with the 3 obstacles and 4 devils. But of these 2 courses, surely the latter is the one to choose. If I were to falter in my determination in the face of persecutions by the sovereign, however, it would be better not to speak out. While thinking this over, I recalled the teachings of the Treasure Tower chapter on the 6 difficult and 9 easy acts. Persons like myself, who are of paltry strength, might still be able to lift Mount Sumeru and toss it about. Persons like myself, who are lacking in supernatural powers, might still shoulder a load of dry grass and yet remain unburned in the fire at the end of the kalpa of decline. And persons like myself, who are without wisdom, might still read and memorize as many sutras as there are sands in the Ganges. But such acts are not difficult, we are told, when compared to the difficulty of embracing even one phrase or verse of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. Nevertheless, I vowed to summon up a powerful and unconquerable desire for the salvation of all beings and never falter in my efforts. So what was that last sentence? Nevertheless, I vowed. Okay, what's the title of this at the beginning? A vow for the enlightenment of all people. The power deep within our lives that can overcome all obstacles. The power of Buddhahood is summoned up through the making of a powerful and unconquerable desire for the salvation of all living beings and to never falter in your efforts to accomplish that. Okay, that's the vow. So, continuing on page 52. The power of the Spirit forges and strengthens human beings and builds rich character. A solid philosophy and firm commitment give rise to the distinctive qualities of an outstanding individual. The opening of the eyes is a treatise that contains the profoundest philosophy and the strongest commitment. It contains the profoundest philosophy because it sets forth the great teaching for ordinary people's attainment of Buddhahood. I'll say it again. It contains the profoundest philosophy because it sets forth, the opening of the eyes sets forth, the great teaching for ordinary people's attainment of Buddhahood. This is an embodiment of the ultimate compassion, the opening of the way for the salvation of all mankind. Nichiren Daishonin recognized the existence of the eternal mystic law in the seemingly transient lives of human beings. Do you understand what he just said there? He saw the Buddha nature that exists in all people, even though it's not manifest. And he established a path whereby each person could bring forth the power of that law. Here we find the profoundest philosophy genuinely capable of giving hope and courage to all people. By strongest commitment, I mean the powerful commitment to Kosen Rufu, with which we vow to propagate the great teaching that can free humankind from misery, no matter what obstacles or devilish forces arise. It goes without saying that underlying this commitment is a spirit of selfless dedication to the law and an immense compassion to empathize with people's sufferings and to cherish their infinite potential. Everybody's with me?
Yes.
All right. In the opening of the eyes, the Daishonin first reveals that the doctrine of actual 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, actual Ichinen Sanzen, hidden in the Lotus Sutra's depths, is the teaching to be propagated in the latter day of the law for the enlightenment of all humankind. That is the Buddhism of the sowing. It's Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We have already discussed this subject in detail. Next, he identifies the true votary of the Lotus Sutra who will spread this great teaching. In other words, after revealing the fundamental law for attaining Buddhahood, he turns to focus on the person who will propagate it. At the beginning of this section of the treatise, the Daishonin discusses his own vow to stand up and spread the mystic law in the latter day. The vow he made when he first proclaimed the establishment of his teaching. This demonstrates the profound importance of a personal vow or pledge when taking on the challenge to propagate the law in the latter age. Now, why is he expressing that? Why is that so important? We touched on it last week. Okay, is the vow hearing Nam-myoho Renge-kyo for the first time? No. Is the vow having the Buddha nature innately within your life? It exists in all people's lives, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first stage of practice, right?
Yeah.
That's a Buddha in theory. Hearing the name and the words of the truth doesn't have anything to do with taking the vow either. What did I qualify the vow being last week?
The fifth.
Fifth stage. Same mind as Nichiren, because this is the vow that Nichiren made. When you make that vow yourself, you now are practicing with the same mind as Nichiren. A whole different empowerment of capacity occurs. You're no longer chanting just for benefits. Of course, you're chanting to show actual proof, the proof of actual fact, just like I did this week. I wanted my father to survive, but I understand that it's much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Okay? It's about me having, I have to correct my thinking. I should not accept defeat. I should not accept anything other than never give up. That's all I do. As the Buddha, that's all I do. That's the basis of everything, is never giving up. So, he's saying, he identifies the true votary of the Lotus Sutra who will spread this great teaching. In other words, is he talking about an individual? No. Even though this clarifies the object of devotion as it relates to the person. Again, as bodhisattvas of the earth, is there any separation between us and the original teacher? No. So what he's talking about right now, he's talking about Nichiren, but he's also talking about you, the correct believer who manifests actual Ichinen Sanzen. Do you understand? That's the person. He identifies the true votary. That's the true votary. The individual that attains actual Ichinen Sanzen, that can lead others to the attainment of actual Ichinen Sanzen. That's a Buddha turning common mortals into Buddhas. Do you get it? That's the Buddha who manifested from a common mortal, from the 9 worlds, to express and display the 10th world in their life, to show that proof of actual fact that it can occur in the life of a common mortal. Otherwise, it's just theoretical. Do you understand? That's our mission, is to prove the theoretical is actual. Okay? Next, he identifies the true votary of the Lotus Sutra who will spread this great teaching. In other words, after revealing the fundamental law for attaining Buddhahood, he turns to focus on the person who will propagate it. At the beginning of this section of the treatise, the Daishonin discusses his own vow to stand up and spread the mystic law in the latter day. The vow he made when he first proclaimed the establishment of his teaching. This demonstrates the profound importance of a personal vow or pledge when taking on the challenge to propagate the law in the latter age. Fundamental darkness that denies human potential for Buddhahood. Bottom of page 52. Touching on how difficult it is to carry out Kosen-Rufu in this latter age, the Daishonin writes, the Buddha predicted in the Nirvana Sutra that in the latter day of the law, those who abide by the correct teaching will be as few as the specks of dirt that can be placed on a fingernail, while those who slander the correct teaching will be as numerous as the specks of dirt in all the lands of the 10 directions. What did you say last week when we talked about correct understanding? You said 1 in 500,000 people maybe, or something very, very minute. Okay? It's already prophesized to be that. Okay? The Daishonin is already qualified. The Nirvana Sutra already qualifies that it's that difficult. Okay? Those who fall into the evil paths because of secular crimes. What's secular crimes? Crimes in society. Adultery, robbing a bank, whatever. Okay? Those who fall into evil paths because of secular crimes will be as insignificant in number as the specks of dirt placed on a fingernail. But those who do so because of violations of the Buddhist teachings will be equal in number to the specks of dirt in all the lands of the 10 directions. Do you understand what he's saying? Secular right and wrong isn't anything compared to how bad slander of the law is. Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm saying? All right. So, more monks than laymen and more nuns than lay women will fall into the evil paths. So this is all part of the Gosho. And yet, when President Ikeda recognized this and decided to go ahead and go forward on the path of revealing the truth, he didn't just turn on the priesthood on his own with no doctrinal foundation for the qualification that they'd be the biggest part of the problem in the first place. It's right there in the opening of the eyes. I'll read it again. And that's from the Nirvana Sutra, by the way, which is part of perfect teaching, as we all know. More monks than laymen and more nuns than lay women will fall into the evil paths. The latter day of the law is described as a defiled age, a time when people are said to have inferior capacity to understand Buddhism correctly, and when monks and nuns of various Buddhist schools become increasingly decadent. While these are obviously important factors, the true essence of why propagation in the latter day is far more difficult than during the former or middle days of the law cannot be fully understood without addressing the subject of slander of the law. Slander of the law means denigrating the correct teaching. What's denigrating?
Despite.
Not just defile. Denigrating is to diminish. It's to make it less than it is, to distort it. All right? Slander of the law means denigrating the correct teaching. In other words, making it a confused thing or qualifying it as less than it actually is. It is the supreme teaching. He's even qualified that the difference between the theoretical first 14 chapters, and the essential teaching, last 14 chapters, is that difference is greater than the difference between the perfect teaching of the Lotus Sutra and the provisional teachings. That's a huge statement to make. He's saying that the difference between the theoretical teaching and the essential teaching is greater than the difference between Nimbutsu and the Lotus Sutra. All right? Slander of the law means denigrating the correct teaching, and it arises from disbelief in that teaching. Correct teaching indicates the Lotus Sutra, which expounds the enlightenment of all people. The sutra teaches that each of us, without exception, can attain Buddhahood, but this is difficult for many people to accept because they think of Buddhas as transcendent, otherworldly beings, somehow separate or different from mere mortals. But they're not. Fundamental darkness is still there, right? This long-standing belief, derived from an authoritarian view of Buddhist faith and religion in general, had so influenced people that they could not believe in the Lotus Sutra or its teaching of universal enlightenment. People's actual life experience has also made it difficult to believe in their potential for Buddhahood. Amid trying circumstances, they can scarcely imagine that anyone suffering as much as they are could possibly become a Buddha. When things are going smoothly, however, and people seem already happy, they tend to think there's no need to seek enlightenment or attain Buddhahood. Right? So the devil of the sixth heaven either comes out as really bad, aggressive things that weigh you down, or really wonderful, bright things that carry you away in a different direction. Do you understand? It's just as easily you're just as easily affected by fundamental darkness manifesting as good things, pleasurable things, things you want, as by obstacles and difficulty. Do you understand? Fundamental darkness isn't dark. Fundamental darkness is delusion to the truth. That's what fundamental darkness is. It's not dark. It's not just evil. It's not just a guy in black clothes in the dark shadows. No. It could be the bright, shiny guy who says, let's go drinking. Okay? It's just as easily anything that will stop you from continuing in your unique path, and each one of us has a unique path. So each one of us has a different manner in which fundamental darkness for our life manifests, because we all have different obstacles that can effectively stop us. My character, is it your character? Is it your character? Is it your background? Is it your nationality? Is it your personality? Is it your sex? We're all so different. How could our fundamental darknesses be the same subset of experience? They cannot be. So it's about compassion. It's about recognizing the breadth of this before you can actually encourage people to understand and perceive it for what it is. Because otherwise they'll always be looking for difficulties. My Sancho Shima. I ran into some Sancho Shima. It's always about a problem. Okay? But it's just as easily Sancho Shima is something carrying you away from doing Gongyo every day. or chanting abundant daimoku, or, you know, maintaining your faith through a difficult time when there are people around you that take you in a different direction than the Gohanzen for overcoming it. Where am I? Column 2. Yes, okay. Consequently, because the idea of universal enlightenment is so difficult to believe. What's universal enlightenment? What's the basis of universal enlightenment? That we all possess the Buddha nature regardless of who we are. Okay? Many lean toward authoritarian religions that promote the concept of transcendent otherworldly gods or Buddhas, because we want something that will save us from being who we are. Please. Yeah. Nobody listens. These religions interpose a clergy as a necessary intermediary between the practitioners and these distant transcendent beings. When a practitioner of the Lotus Sutra, striving to enable all people to attain enlightenment, appears in a society where such religious views predominate, many who are stubbornly attached to their existing beliefs will resent and persecute that person, the very one actually practicing the correct teaching. Trust me, that happens. For example, illustrating the persecution that arises from disbelief in and slander of the correct teaching that expounds the enlightenment of all people, Encouraging Devotion, the 13th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, describes the three powerful enemies, taunting the sutra's practitioners with sarcastic contempt. You are all, no doubt, Buddhas. Do you remember that? Remember in the Encouraging Devotion chapter, I could read it to you. God is so cool, because they even say, they say that the people that are upholding the Lotus Sutra are twisting and making up doctrine. Okay, that they're confusing the truth, and then they make fun of them by saying, "Oh, but of course you're all Buddhas, right? That's what you believe. You're all no doubt Buddhists, because that's the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, right?" Okay, so the Hinayana and provisional. Does everybody really remember what I'm talking about from the Encouraging Devotion chapter?
No.
It's too important. You got to know this, man. This is really, really important for you.
30笔，然后许我每笔记掉的。
Okay, because this is where the three powerful enemies are, and this is just too way cool for me not to just go ahead and share it again. Hang on, 16, 13, here we go. Peaceful practices before the encouraging devotion. Oh, and wouldn't you know, there's a bunch of yellow here. Okay, here it is. Are you ready?
Yes.
He says, at that time the bodhisattvas joined their voices together and spoke in verse form, saying, "We beg you not to worry." They're saying this to Shakyamuni. This is Shakyamuni saying, who will uphold the law after my death, right? He says, "We beg you not to worry. After the Buddha has passed into extinction in an age of evil, or fear and evil, we will preach far and wide. There will be many ignorant people." Ignorant doesn't mean stupid people. It means not informed, uneducated to the truth, unaware of the truth. There will be many ignorant people who will curse and speak ill of us, and who will attack us with swords and staves. But we will endure all these things. In that evil age, there will be monks with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked. That's the second time that's happened in 3 weeks. In that evil age, there will be monks with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked, who will suppose that they have attained what they have not attained. Who will suppose that they have attained what they have not attained. In other words, they'll think they know what they don't know. Being proud and boastful in heart. Or there will be forest-dwelling monks wearing clothing of parched rags and living in retirement, who will claim they are practicing the true way, despising and looking down on all humankind, who still dwells in the secular world of the, you know, the 9 worlds. They haven't become ascetics. Greedy for profit and support, they will preach the law to white-robed laymen who will be respected and revered by the world as though they were arhats who possess the 6 transcendental powers. These are all religious figures. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about religiosity. My shit don't stink. You know, I got something that you don't. All right? These men with evil in their hearts, because it's not compassion that drives them. It's being better than other people. It's the world of anger. He says, constantly thinking of worldly affairs, will borrow the name of forest-dwelling monks and take delight in proclaiming our faults, the correct practitioners, the believers that are making this pronouncement to Shakyamuni at the assembly, right? Will borrow the name of forest-dwelling monks and take delight in proclaiming our faults, saying things like this. Now talking about Shakyamuni's disciples. These monks are greedy and for profit and support, and therefore they preach non-Buddhist doctrines. So they flip it. They try to say that the correct teaching is the incorrect teaching. Do you understand? And they say that we fabricate their own scriptures. That they're saying that we fabricate our own scriptures to delude the people of the world. We're trying to delude the people of the world because they hope, they're talking about us, because they hope to gain fame and renown thereby and make distinctions when preaching this sutra. Isn't Nam-myoho Renge-kyo the ultimate distinction? Yes. Who make make distinctions. Because in the midst of great assemblies, they constantly try to defame us, the provisional believers. They will address the rulers, high ministers, Brahmins, and householders, as well as other monks. And then they will... they will slandering and speaking evil of us, and they are saying, these are men of perverted views, the true practitioners, who preach non-Buddhist doctrines. But because we revere the Buddha, we will bear all these evils. Though they treat us with contempt, saying, you are all no doubt Buddhas, all such words of arrogance and contempt toward us, we will endure and accept. In a muddied age, in an evil age, there will be many things to fear. Evil demons will take possession of others, and through them curse, revile, and heap shame on us. But we, reverently trusting in the Buddha, will put on the armor of perseverance in order to preach this sutra. We will bear these difficult things. This is a vow. We will bear these difficult things. We care nothing for our bodies or lives, but are anxious only for the unsurpassed way. This is what inspired the Daishonin. We are anxious only for the unsurpassed way. In ages to come, we will protect and uphold what the Buddha has entrusted to us in the Lotus Sutra. Thus, the world-honored one must know. The evil monks of that muddied age, failing to understand the Buddha's expedient means, not understanding the difference between the provisional and the true teaching, failing to understand the Buddha's expedient means, how he preaches the law in accordance with what is appropriate, will confront us with foul language and angry frowns. Again and again, we will be banished. This is all the stuff that the Daishonin read and go, oh, dude, that's me. Again and again, we will be banished to a place far removed from towers and temples. Izu Peninsula, Sado Island. All these various evils, because we keep in mind the Buddha's orders, we will endure. If in the settlements and towns there are those who seek the law, we will go to wherever they are and preach the law entrusted to us by the Buddha. Which means whatever's going on in those towns, we'll go endure that. Do you understand? We're not going to ride in a golden carriage. We will be the envoys of the world-honored one, facing the assemblies without fear. We will preach the law with skill, for we desire the Buddha to rest in tranquility. In the presence of the world-honored one and the Buddhas who have gathered from the 10 directions, we proclaim this vow. The Buddha must know what is in our hearts. That's the vow. Okay, so it's in the Lotus Sutra. This isn't even something that originates with Nichiren deciding to do something called Kosen Rufu. Okay? This is the extension of that Buddhism of the harvest and the Buddhism of the sowing being so completely different as fire from water or the provisional teachings of the Lotus Sutra. But still, the basic outline still is there. So, you are all no doubt Buddhists on the bottom of page 53. You guys should really remember this. This is the encouraging devotion. This is very important stuff here. The Hinayana and provisional Mahayana teachings either make Shakyamuni out to be a special being, possessing a state of life that human beings cannot attain, or they only discuss transcendent Buddhas far removed from the mortal realm, such as Amida or Mahavajrana. They don't even recognize Shakyamuni. Right? Okay. Buddhist schools based on such teachings emerged during the former and middle days of the law. And the more they focused on otherworldly Buddhas, the more authoritarian they eventually became. In the latter day of the law, people failed to grasp the Lotus Sutra's true meaning and insist even more rigidly that authoritarian religion is correct. The prevailing religious attitude is one of submissive dependence on the power or beneficence of transcendent gods or Buddhas. As a result, people's attachment to faith in the teachings of their existing Buddhist schools grows even stronger, and mistaken views grow more rampant, as evidenced by the Daishonin's words. Those who espouse Hinayana reject Mahayana, and those who espouse provisional teachings attack the true teaching. That is, there is a prevalence of Buddhist schools that slander the Lotus Sutra. In the end, these schools serve as negative influences, producing many disbelievers and slanderers of the Lotus Sutra. They give rise to the lamentable situation in which those who do so fall into the evil paths because of violations of the Buddhist teachings will be equal in number to the specks of dirt in all the lands of the 10 directions. Buddhism is originally a teaching for enabling people to attain enlightenment. As a result of believing in the erroneous doctrines of various Buddhist schools, however, people fall into the evil paths. This is what happens in the latter day when the law is about to perish. The Daishonin stood up alone to lead the people of this dark age to enlightenment, and toward that end he exposed in detail the hidden devilish nature of the various Buddhist schools of his day. In the opening of the eyes before sharing his vow and taking his solitary stand as the votary of the Lotus Sutra, the Daishonin exposes and harshly denounces the true nature of these schools that have degenerated into the purveyors of slanderous teachings and caused people to fall into the evil paths of existence. He identifies this devilish nature as a manifestation of the principle of evil demons entering the body. Okay, but what was the key takeaway there for you as I read this? Is this all just about incorrect understanding in Nembutsu or in other provisional sects? True word? No. This can also apply to people practicing the Soka philosophy with the misunderstanding that there are transcendent individuals that are separate and different from everyone else. Understand when he says here, do you understand? I know you got me on that one. All right? So, why does Daisaku Ikeda constantly, what's his mentor-disciple thing about with Daisaku Ikeda and us? It's for us to get mainlined the correct understanding. He's not leaving it to other people to tell us, by the way, you're going to run into people that are going to have this all upside down and are going to be all into differentiation and hierarchical processes. And he says right here, insist even more rigidly that authoritarian religion is correct. Yeah. So he's saying in that sentence, authoritarian religion is incorrect. So if there's an authoritarian basis for the practice of our Buddhism, it's an incorrect concept of understanding of this Buddhism. Does everybody understand what I'm hinting at?
Yes.
You understand what I'm really saying. Okay? So, keep that in mind. And if when you object to that, people challenge you, just tell them, that's Daisaku Ikeda's teaching. I can show you where it says. It's page 54 of the lecture on the opening of the eyes. Yeah, or in the encouraging devotion chapter. That's why you need to read this and read it and read it and read it and read it. We're done, right? It's done. Sorry. See you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.